Going live. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Wall, a Game of Thrones podcast. I am PG Holyfield. A little bit late today. We have a story that Christiana can share. We have a great video feed of her. It looks a little different today. Why does it look a little different today, Christiana?
So the fact that I have one icon, which is probably showing in the Hangout right now with my little profile pic, and then a different one with my video, is I dropped my webcam into my Diet Coke, and so I am using my iPad's camera. It's working out okay, but a little unusual to be sure. It is the perils of, having technology and Diet Coke together, but I would argue still worth it.
More importantly,
I have two things to say. Go ahead. Sorry.
Do you have Diet Coke to drink, Christiana? That's really the important question. Do you have the caffeine you need to get you through the night?
I do, and it's in my Hunger Games Catching Fire cup.
Nice.
The big, wide open opening.
So we may have
Easy
learned
for
something
technology
tonight.
to fall into.
Yeah.
I have two things to say to that story.
I lost an iPod that way.
Number one, obviously your webcam likes Diet Pepsi better, or it would still be working. And number two, if anyone from my radio station is watching, this is why we don't let you bring drinks in the studio.
This is how you get
and for Mike McCauley, who is in the chat in the Q&A, it is not because I'm running XP on my computer. It was because that's not the reason we were late. It was because we were trying to figure out the best way to get Christiana video and audio at the same time. And yes, we now have Hangout, as Mike says. So, as we were saying, this is a Game of Thrones podcast. This week we are going to be talking about First of His Name, which is episode 5 of season 4. And as you also can tell, we do this live on Wednesdays. We have Google event where we do this, where we have a Q&A app up. People can ask questions. Usually they're just talking amongst themselves, which is awesome, and we'll pull in questions into the show as we go along. If you are listening after the fact, definitely come by specficmedia.com or our Google page or the YouTube page once this is up, and post questions there or comments, and we'll try to pull them into the next show. But tonight we're going to be talking about First of His Name. We have a full crew tonight. We have the extra window down below for Christiana, and
Twice the fun.
Mr. Chooch is back this week after his Eye of Sauron illness prevented him from taking part last week.
Yeah.
How are you now? Are you all better, all recovered?
Oh yeah, I had some little downtime, kick back, put on some headphones, listen to some Depeche Mode, and just heal is what I'm saying.
What color is your tongue today?
Oh God, more Depeche Mode. I thought we were done with
Oh.
that. Yeah.
You didn't think I could let you get away with that, did you?
Mm-mm. It's one of the reasons why he's my soulmate.
Yeah, we did have discussions last week of missing the color, the colored tongue for the show. So your eye color was making up for it, I guess. But
yeah.
Yes. So a different episode this week. Less. I don't know. I mean, they had the big 20-minute thing at the end of the episode, Beyond the Wall, but a lot more character study and everything. What everybody think of it? Start with Chooch.
Character study? I didn't see that, but overall, I enjoyed it. It was very talky again. I thought we learned, a lot about some people that we didn't necessarily know, and some people that we really wanted to see die, or at least I really wanted to see die, finally got there, so I like that.
Yeah. What about you, Christiana?
I liked it. I felt like it was a bit of an uptick from the last couple, which I didn't hate, but we're not perfect either. And which isn't to say one is perfect necessarily. In particular, some of the ways that it seemed like it was diverging from the books, they kind of curved it back around to line up with the book story faster than I expected, given how much it seemed like they were changing. But yeah, I liked it.
Very good. Nutty?
No, I liked it. Lots of really interesting information. We could argue probably till the cows come home about how they handled things that were different from the books. I feel like the episodes are getting less episodic. Like, I feel like we had themes for each of the episodes in the past. So it was like, well, this is the episode that's all about that kind of a feeling, and we see it in the different stories, whereas the episodes seem to be just like middle, lots of middle, no beginnings, no ends, just lots of middle. I'm not saying it's bad, it just feels like a different pace to me.
And Viv?
I agree. I think it was more upbeat. It was a different pace, and I was kind of relieved about that. At the same time, I thought it really delivered some awesome punches. So I was really happy with this episode.
Yeah, I felt like I enjoyed the episode. I felt like it was like you're talking about thematic episodes. I actually did think this was a very heavily themed, not so much the whole, like we usually have some of the multiple meanings behind the title of the episode, whereas this one was first of his name was pretty much the coronation. But one of the things I thought was really explored well was sort of characters coming to terms with things, or coming to terms with their respective situations. You had Cersei sort of changing her approach because she's focusing on the trial and getting Tyrion, so she's doing, instead of blasting out at everybody, it's more like, okay, I'm going to be the good daughter, I'm going to be the grieving mother, and just hit up all the the judges, or at least the family, in Marjorie's case, the family, to sort of possibly get her way in the future. And you had all the Starks sort of dealing with their situations in ways. Arya sort of realizing her water dancing doesn't really amount to much when you're dealing with someone twice your size and with armor on and things like that, and the other characters, which we'll get into. But I just thought there was some really good exploration of that in this episode. And then the big I guess culmination of John's, or the John Bran almost meeting storyline, and the end of Craster's Keep, I thought was handled pretty well for the most part, so did enjoy it. Not as much complaints as last week, so that's good. Except for the fact that the running joke of the previously on segment before the show is just becoming so ridiculous. You basically watched that 1 minute, and you didn't need to watch the episode because you knew everything that was going to be in the episode. Especially if you read the book. It was just in there, so it was just like, okay, well, I can go to bed now. Yeah, I did enjoy it. And we will get to the contest at the end, but I do want to do a quick tease for that, because there's somebody on the show who hasn't read the books who almost got it exactly right, both categories. So
beginner's luck.
To that. Yeah, so all of us that have read the books, we don't know shit when it comes to guessing how many people are going to die and how many times they're gonna talk about something. So yeah, so getting into the episode, I guess we can start with get the coronation. Actually, I'm just gonna let's get Marine out of the way, Dany's thing, since there was just the one scene really, and So we got discussion of Jorah has the magic messaging gets to him, and he lets everybody know that Joffrey is dead, killed at his own wedding, and they discuss the idea of what do we do now? We've got these cities, we've got a navy thanks to Dario, and goes into that, and then there's a one-on-one discussion between Dany and Jorah. Anybody want to jump in on those two scenes?
Well, my notes from the last one that I missed, last episode, about the power vacuum and what's going on, I'm glad they got to it right away. And you'd think they would have had some kind of pre-planning along. They do a lot of horse riding, so I think they could talk a little bit about post-domination strategy, but I'm glad to see they're addressing that. And I guess for story-wise, it culminated into kind of a new turn for her. So I guess it did work that way, but glad they talked about it.
Mm-hmm. I was wondering if, for you, Chooch, and I guess anyone who is not familiar with this part in the books, because I think it would probably line up with my reaction at this point in the books, which is a little bit of, although I understand where she's coming from, okay, she's just going to stay in Marine now?
I took it as realizing, get your house in order, and those dragons still need to grow some, so it's good a place as any.
Okay,
all along I was wondering if she was going to stop, once she got the Unsullied and freed the slaves, I was wondering if she was going to stop there for a while and,
Well, now your
on
question
a rampage.
No, I think it's good. I mean, she's left people probably in many cases in a worse situation, and she's going to take care of it. And I think it's a valid point of how can she take on Westeros if she can't manage 3 slave cities. And she'll learn, while she's doing it too.
Hmm? Well, yeah, I mean, I understand, various reasons for it and all that. I guess I was just certainly in the books I was a little taken aback by just this whole idea of like, okay, this is a complete change of what we thought the whole end goal was supposed to be, and we can understand like the rationale, but this is really it's a very there's what's the exit strategy here?
Yeah. This is an adventure book.
Well, Chooch, why would you suppose that she only wanted Jorah's input when she was making the decision? She kicked everybody out but Jorah.
I think he's the one she still trusts the most. His opinion.
Right on, I was just curious.
It's getting a weird hissing sound for a minute.
I'm not sure where that was coming from.
Is it just me that's losing Chooch's video every once in a while too?
His video's been cutting out
Weird.
for a while now.
Make sure I got everything closed.
Yeah, as far as that, I did feel like it was. I just found it interesting that like Barristan was the one that was.
There went PG.
Is everybody fading now, or am I?
No, I can hear you. Keep talking. Keep talking. The words are what's important.
Okay. I just found it interesting that Barristan was the one that was more. I think we can move. We can attack King's Landing with that many men, and the old families will rally to the Targaryen flag and that sort of thing, and Jorah's preaching patience, or not King's Landing isn't the 7 kingdoms and that sort of thing. I just thought that was interesting, and of course Dario saying that he took the Navy, and she was upset at first, saying, well, who ordered you to do that? No one. Then why'd you do it? Oh, I heard you like ships. And then she has that look away where her, she sort of smiles a little bit to herself, and I just I see Christiana going, he's not good for you!
I'm just looking out for her. It's, you know.
I know. Yeah, but yeah, but you know, the idea that the you leave, and we talked about it with Tywin. Sorry, that it's much easier to conquer than it is to rule, and you know, Tywin's discovered that a lot at first and has settled in, and now she's realizing, well, it's a lot easier when you have numbers and everything that to take these cities, but once you leave, that to be able to keep control of them is a completely different thing. So looks like she's gonna stick around there and see what's ruling. I like the idea that she loves, what she loves most is to stand over a balcony and survey her land.
I noticed that as well. I was like, that's the same post from last week.
She's like, go ahead, Nettie.
Oh no, I was just gonna say what I noticed though is, as I'm thinking about this change of decision, because I remember reading the books and going, what do you mean you're staying? You went all the way this way, you're in the wrong direction, just so that you could get a navy, so that you could come back to West. Like, when are you coming to Westeros? What are you doing? But at the same time, like, as you think about it, she's meshing the idea of being a Khaleesi, because she's taken so much from being a Dothraki and being a Western ruler. For instance, the Dothraki, they conquer, they plunder, and then they leave. Or you give them half of what you have anyway, so that they don't plunder you, and then they just go. Whereas she actually has a purpose. She wants to make a change for the slaves. And we talked a lot about this last week, about how it matters a lot to her because being a woman in that society, she is a slave. She was bought and sold. But then you also look over at, let's say, Winterfell. You know, Theon captured Winterfell, but could he hold on to it? So you've got this like balance, and I think it's very wise that she wants to learn, that she wants to kind of have an apprenticeship there. Mm-hmm. But I feel like they just kind of glossed over the whole, well, these other cities that I've already taken and freed the slaves, they're now worse off than they were when before, because now people are starving, and they captured everything in a sentence, and you miss the complexities of it. And we can make many parallels to actual history to see where the inspiration comes from, but it's interesting. It's not action-oriented, so I'm sure we'll get people grumbling about it, like, oh gosh, Danny, just move, just go on. I'm bored of this.
Well, one of the things sorry, I don't mean.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna. I mean, I guess it's really more just like a joke, but I had always. Once I got over my initial reaction to it in the books, I was just thinking, well, you know, Slaver's Bay, all those, you know, the cities, it's just like a starter kingdom, you know, it's to get her practice in.
It's her first 10 levels in an MMO area, you know. Got to build up, so. Yep. But yeah, for some reason, I just got the idea when they were describing the butcher, Cleon, whatever his name was. I was just like, okay, we're going to have to see this guy at some point. You know, they went through the trouble of describing him as the butcher. So. Well,
and also, I guess just the way they described it here in the show is that she wants to rule Slaver's Bay, not Meereen. And so it sounds to me like they're maybe intending to have some show business of her actually doing something to help Yunkai and Astapor, as well as the, as well as the Meereen.
Well, we lost Christiana's video.
Hang on.
Okay. We still have
my
have your
iPad
audio.
just suddenly popped up with the Get Started with Hangouts.
I'm already started, Google.
Yeah, like I'm actively in the middle of one. Crash recovery, attempting to recover from a crash. Please help us fix the issue by sending a crash report.
Well, when I first clicked on the YouTube channel, I usually do to make sure everything's up and running. At first, it wouldn't load anything, and then it loaded, and so, yeah, I don't know. Now it says Christian is
well.
joining the call.
So,
Let's see. Sheriff Bullock in the chat says, "I feel that whether or not Dany can rule in Essos is irrelevant to how well she'd do as a king in Westeros, because in Essos she's looking to change the entire social stratification, leaving huge power vacuums. She wouldn't have such a big lift in Westeros."
That's a good point. She's also an outsider who doesn't know the culture at all in Slaver's Bay.
And he also asked if Joss Whedon writing and directing the musical episode of Thrones next season. And, one can only hope. So
I would pay so much money for a Kickstarter to make that happen.
No more musicals.
And speaking of
Wait. If we have a musical, if we have a musical, does that mean that we'll have actual dancing dragons?
One would hope.
The latest book is called A Dance with Dragons.
Mike in the Q&A says, speaking of Dany standing at the balcony singing "Don't Cry for Me, Marine," instead of Argentina.
I was thinking it's the White Walkers that would want to freeze the world.
Well, the snow never bothered them anyway.
We will find a way to... Sorry.
That's a Dr. Horrible reference. For those that don't know it, go find it because it's awesome.
But I also kind of feel like they'd be singing about how the cold doesn't bother them anyway also.
That's good too.
Oh, boy. As I guess I'll ask
the horn-headed White Walker, he could sing that. I'm going to wait for PG to start talking again before I interrupt again.
We'll just do this for the next hour. Is anyone else disappointed that they haven't showcased the dragons since episode 1, like Macaulay asks?
No, I'm fine with it. I mean, we've established they're big and they're snarly and they're wild, and I'm okay with them putting the money elsewhere for a little while.
Save it up for where it counts.
Yeah, a little while.
I'd rather them utilize the CGI time for when the dragons are actually important than just having them off in the distance for no particular reason other than saying, yeah, by the way, there be dragons.
Yeah.
So, anybody else notice that Jorah's not looking as healthy as he used to?
You know, I thought that was just me. I thought he was looking like a really aged romance novel cover model instead of just, the romance novel.
Yeah, I was noticing he looked a lot older, but it was also, it did feel a bit like they're maybe doing it on purpose for some reason, as opposed to just the actor looks older now. Because if that was the only issue, I'm sure with makeup they could make him look more like he did in past seasons than they did.
I think he just looks a little sad and distant, like, I used to be Dany's favorite. I used to be the one that, and now there's all these other good. There's Barristan Selmy, and there's Grey Worm, and there's this Dario, and he was so happy that she wanted to talk to him alone, but that's it.
Well, there could be something to that. Yeah, I mean, that might be it. Although, he was still the one that she wanted to stay. Although this is a very minor nitpick, but it's just something that it's such a trope. This whole thing of all right, all of you leave. I want to be alone.
Yeah.
And then they all start to leave, and she goes, "Not you, Jorah." Like, he should have known that when she said, "All of you leave," she didn't mean him. Like, it's one thing to say, "All of you leave except for Jorah." Okay, fine. But all of you leave. Jorah starts to leave, and she's like, "Where are you going, dude?" And he's like,
That's an
"What
afterthought.
you just said." So anyway, minor complaint, but it's such a trope in this kind of show.
Because of course, if he had just stayed and sat there, should have been. I said, "All of you go."
Right.
So we can backtrack a little bit and talk about the coronation. So first of his name, got that out of the way as far as the meaning behind that, and quick coronation, which was nice. Thought we might get a little more crown talk, but or sightings, but it was just the one scene there.
Yeah.
We had I did like the voice on the septum. Always jealous of anybody that can roll their R's like that. So happy with that.
I thought it was interesting.
And the main thing.
Sorry. I was just going to say interesting that they made a bigger point of the religious aspects of the coronation ceremony than they have in the past.
You're impressed by people that can roll their R's.
Yeah. Long may he reign. Yeah. But the main thing that it did for me was remind me how much I miss Varys, because seeing him walk up and from the faraway shot. And,
looks like we do get a bit more of him next time. The preview makes it look like we get more Varys next time.
Yep. And for those that thought that Sir Pounce was a cock blocker, I think Cersei was like supreme.
Dude, that wasn't even just a cock block. I mean, the way her hair was done, I even wrote it down. She looks like some pissed off like frau, like some really severe headmistress or something that's going to come around and whip her.
I saw you guys making eye contact.
Oh my God, man,
I'm watching you.
I knew that shot was going to happen.
It was so funny though.
Yeah,
her and Marjorie's facial expressions during their talk were just priceless.
Yeah.
The eye rolls. And
Yep. But what was I gonna say? I even like the little camera thing when she did walk in between. Like the camera's like focused on her stomach almost, because the way that she's like was towering over. And standing between them when they were making googly eyes, and then the camera pans up to her face, and she's just like, "What the hell are you doing?" But then she comes over and makes nice. So
See, here's the thing, and I'll confess that I didn't quite pick up on this the first time through the episode, because I think. Probably like most people, when Cersei actually goes over to talk to Marjorie, and then there is surprisingly frank with her about what Joffrey was like, and is making nice, and I'm kind of thinking, this is a new strategy for Cersei. What's going on here? And I only really picked up on it at reading a recap of the show, but she does this in 3 different scenes. This episode, she plays nice with people that she had previously not indicated nice feelings towards. But let's see, who were they? The daughter of one of the judges in Tyrion's trial, her father, who's one of the judges in Tyrion's trial, and Oberyn, who's one of the judges in Tyrion's trial.
Yeah.
I think she is basically calling in all her chips and playing nice to curry favor with the 3 judges in Tyrion's trial.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
I will admit, though, that it took someone else pointing it out for me to realize that, but then in the rewatch, I definitely noticed.
I was so surprised to see her appearing to be so calm, cool, and collected, and logical. And I know she had a crazy Cersei motive, and I was like, this is really awesome to see. As much as I miss crazy Cersei, I'm sure she'll come back later. This was really kind of cool, because as you're reading the books, at some point, we get a point of view chapter from Cersei, so you can see how her brain works. And I know when I read those chapters, I'm like, if you would just stop and think for a minute, you could do so much. and I feel like she's heard me. She's heard me, and it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out in the show.
Mm-hmm. And Nicole in the chat says, "I'm thinking it's a trap."
Yeah.
Yep.
Where's Admiral Akbar when we need him?
And Sheriff Bullock said that he noticed that Jor looked old and tired as well. I did like, or I just thought it was very funny that this conversation between Cersei and Marjorie was going on, and it's like the first time that like Marjorie's made like a tactical error when she, like, at the end of this nice conversation, and she's hearing exactly what she wants to hear, and then she brings up the marriage with the pillow biter, and
yeah.
I don't think it was a tactical error so much as her realizing, oh, you're going to be nice to me now. Well, if we're going to be nice,
right.
Gosh, I won't know whether to call you sister, which incidentally is the thing that Cersei had previously said. If you call me sister again, I will have you strangled in your sleep.
Yeah.
I didn't know whether
she went through the story of the reigns of Castamere.
Mother, and so I thought of it as kind of like, oh, you want to be nice to me to curry favor with my father now? Well, you know what? You're going to pay for it. That was my.
But I think it also makes her look sympathetic as a mother, that she'll put up with that bullshit, because I thought Marjorie was being a total cunt at that moment. But, I mean, come on, let's not forget, this is her dead son's murderer's trial we're talking about. And I know Cersei's a bitch, but I could still empathize with her. And it just seemed like it was like kicking a dog when it was down. It didn't seem necessary, and it seemed totally out of character for everything that we've seen of Marjorie. Oh, I'm sorry, I hit a fan button. Everything out of like character for her, except for like the scene when she was alone with Joffrey with the crossbow, and would you like to see me kill something with it? That whole creepy thing. So that was the only thing I didn't really like about that scene. I thought Cersei's honesty was compelling and almost convincing.
But I can see that, except that she's literally only doing it because she has an ulterior motive.
Right. Because her son is dead and she thinks this guy killed.
Well, it's because she hates Tyrion. So, but she's not
found
being
a way
nice
to kill the dwarf brother that killed her mother.
But see,
and
that
her
to
life,
my mind is not a sympathetic motive. Like, we can understand she's upset, but we know she's being completely irrational about Tyrion there.
But it's totally in character for her, so I don't know why.
I'm not saying it's not in character. I'm saying it's still awful, is all.
Oh, well, shit, yeah, of course it's awful. It's Cersei.
I'm just saying, I don't say, oh, look, how open and vulnerable and honest she's being there. I'm saying, no, she is telling Marjorie what she thinks Marjorie will respond to, because she's trying to curry favor in a manipulation. It's not any kind of, oh, I respect you as a person, Marjorie, and so I'm going to share my feelings with you. It is, I'm going to try to get you to talk your dad into siding with me in the trial. So I felt like I understand why she's doing it, but I didn't have any... I don't know. I didn't really feel any sympathy for her, because I feel like she's, any heartache she gets from this is totally her reaping what she sowed. That's my opinion.
And Sheriff Bullock's opinion is, I can't believe how nice and reasonable Cersei was in this episode. Scared the shit out of me.
Yep.
Sticking with King's Landing, the next scene we see is the aforementioned Cersei with Tywin. She follows through on her earlier conversation. You sort of hear the end of it as the scene opens, where they're talking about the Marjorie Tommen wedding. Tywin makes the point to say no 77-course meal this time. And then he brings up the nuptials between her and Loras, and she at least responds to that saying, fortnight. So I like the conversation about the gold drying up in the Westerlands, and the line about pounds, tons, and ounces. I think actually Nobilis sent a message saying that he really liked that line about pounds, tons, or ounces. Zero in all cases, sounds like. And then the discussion, finally the payoff on the discussion with about the Iron Bank. Much more talk about that. There was one line where they were talking about where she's talking about the legacy of the family is more important than anything. Throwing his line back at him, and I did like she mentioned the idea of him turning his back on Jaime for refusing to contribute to its future before slamming Tyrion, and I was sort of thinking back, and you had the thing in episode 1 where he gets the sword, but then he refuses to go, take over Casterly Rock, Jaime, and he's like, okay, I'm disowning you or what have you. But really, what repercussions have we seen of that other than him saying that? Because Jaime's where he wants to be, so it doesn't really feel like he's lost too much in the way of what he wanted. So, but the scene as a whole, anybody have anything they wanted to talk about?
Well, it's definitely clear that they're being much more explicit with the Iron Bank stuff that they had hinted at previously, like you mentioned. I think a bit like what she was doing with Marjorie. I think this whole thing about promising to wed Loras shortly after, and do all of that stuff, I feel like even then in her head she's thinking, well, that's going to be after the trial is done, so who knows what might happen then. I can agree that that's the plan now, and then figure a way out of it once Tyrion has been executed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's her telling him what she thinks he wants to hear. And I think the thing is too, though, that Tywin knows exactly what she's doing. He even essentially calls her on it. Like, she hasn't really mentioned the trial, and he's kind of like, well, I can't talk to you about the trial.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he knows exactly what she's doing, but he doesn't really care because he figures that she doesn't really get a choice in the matter anyway. So
I think he's just sort of relieved that she's not fighting him on every little thing, so he's just like, I'm gonna roll with this.
Don't care why she's quiet. She's quiet. I thought it was an interesting scene because at one point she says, so who can we trust? Who is there we can rely on? And he says, ourselves. And I think it's funny because in this is the first scene that I've looked and I've actually questioned, is he even including Tyrion and Jaime in that anymore, or does it literally just mean the two of them face to face? Because he's disinherited, and at least in words, he's disinherited Jaime because he wouldn't go back to Casterly Rock, and Tyrion now sits in a dungeon for murdering the king. So, I mean, how specific do you think he was being when he said ourselves, Chooch?
God, I didn't even think of it that way. I don't know.
I sort of got the feeling that, he's just so used to saying that, the only people we can trust are ourselves or, the family.
Meaning the Lannisters as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the idea that that's sort of ridiculous because, of what you just said. We've got Tyrion that people think have, killed Joffrey, and you've got Jaime being shunned in most circles, and that Tywin doesn't trust or hold Cersei in the greatest regard just because of her place. So I think it's sort of just brings out that that's what he has always said, so that's what he's going to keep saying. And of course, his brother Kevin hasn't been
where's he
featured
at?
in the show at all.
Yeah,
So
I'm really surprised that they haven't reintroduced him, just because.
I'm trying to. I think the last time we saw Kevin, the last time I remember seeing Kevin is when Tywin was butchering that stag, but he may have been at Harrenhal on one of those little war councils.
Yeah, I believe that he was. We saw him when
Yeah.
Tywin was
Harrenhal.
still at Harrenhal. But again, without, just Kevin starts to matter more to the story. Or at least he did in the books. So
Yeah,
clearly, if
I
they're
know.
not going to have Kevin, then that's going to change some aspects of how certain things play out.
Right.
But we'll see about that. One thing that occurred to me though, as far as Tywin disowning Jaime, my guess is that, and I actually never even really thought about it this way in the books, but was just realizing it's really kind of a conditional disowning, isn't it? I mean, it's more like, okay, Jaime, you want to go off and play Kingsguard, that's fine. When you're in trouble and you need my help again, you know what the price will be.
Well, yeah, and that's what I meant when I said, at least in words only, to Cersei and Jaime, he's disowned him. We don't know if he's taken any legal, whatever they would justify as legal or call legal steps there.
And Cersei certainly wouldn't know. As I'm thinking about it, as he was saying the words, I just took it as family. And then I was thinking, there are lots of cousins and stuff, and I totally forgot he had a brother, because where else would the cousins come from?
Well, yeah, we
Or
haven't
aunts,
seen
great
Lancel
uncles.
at all for a while
Yeah.
either. Not since the Blackwater, I think.
Oh, he'll come back next season, cast in a different role. No. So from there, unless anybody else has any other comments on that scene, the next thing in King's Landing would be Oberyn and Cersei. Opens up with him writing a poem, it turns out, to one of his daughters. He had a lot of talk about daughters. He has 8 daughters. She plays, and this isn't a spoiler because the book is different, but but it sort of comes up in 2 of these conversations. But sort of, I think nearly the same sort of conversations happened in the book as far as her talking to Oberyn. But doesn't he she sort of offer the idea of marriage to her as something
That sounds familiar.
that's possible?
I don't know.
remember that. You might be right, but I don't remember. That.
I was not commenting about the whole I'll marry Loras because of that. Because
Yeah, I think
Well, we're
that's
getting into spoiler territory, so.
yeah.
Yeah, I was just for the idea of they've added that the different sideline with who they're threatening to pair Cersei with, but just the idea that this particular scene, she comes at it from a you have my daughter, you have 8 daughters, we have this in common, and then she sort of plays up her that side of her being a mother and missing her daughter, rather than what I think I remember the book, and people can tell me I'm wrong, that it was a different tact altogether as far as what how she was trying to influence Oberyn and that sort of thing.
I mean, okay, that seems, it feels wrong to me in my headcanon, so to speak, but it might well be that is exactly what happened. But I just I had always thought that Cersei's objection was not to Loras per se, but rather that she just didn't want to get married to anybody.
Right.
I think in the books it wasn't her idea, but there is talk of her and Oberyn. But at that point, we're not in her point of view. So,
Well,
Look, I'm going to say, I don't care whose idea it is. I don't care how they have it in the book. I really loved seeing those 2 characters interact together on screen, so I want to see more of it. Those are 2 of my favorite storylines right now, is seeing his passion and loyalty, but also his I'm going to kill every Lannister I can. It's all kind of really sexy kind of a thing, but the interplay he does with Cersei, I think, is really interesting because it's respectful, but he respects her as a mom.
Her marrying Loras doesn't make sense because it's her second marriage, and he's the first son of the house. He would be the lord of
Well,
wherever the Tyrells are from. So it's not like he can expect to make children with her. So why is that a good marriage on that side of things? They want the connection with the Tyrells, but it's not really.
Nobody really, I don't think,
Well-
expects Loras to make babies, though, honey. I think that's part of the equation, is that Cersei's age doesn't matter. Olenna
Well, they
knows.
expected
remember
Renly.
that there was the whole argument about that last season, is that basically what Tywin told Olenna is this, Olenna didn't want the match,
Yeah.
but Tywin basically just said, if you don't agree to this match, I will name him to the Kingsguard.
That's true.
Remember?
You're
so
right,
it's
you're
not
right.
like it was their choice. It was basically saying, like, it would be Cersei, which has small chance for any kind of heir, but it, as opposed to preventing there from being any kind of, not only heir from Loras, but also just Loras being able to go and be the lord of a keep or something.
Yeah, that's true.
But
in
the
the
other thing
show,
is,
have his
too, in the
brothers.
books, what's very different about the whole situation is that Loras did become a member of the Kingsguard in the books before this point, and so that whole element of it was different. So that might be why there was perhaps more of a potential that there might be, the connection between Oberyn and Cersei.
Right. Because in the books, Loras has two brothers. He's got Willis, who is the first son. Loras isn't a first son, and that makes a huge difference. You never see Willis because he's a cripple. He fell off his horse. And then Guylan, I think I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, but his other brother is also a warrior and everything. So they have like a line of succession, and he can go into the Kingsguard, and it's all of this other stuff. So switching that all around to simplify it confuses me a little, just because I'm like, okay, but he's the first son, but okay, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, they've definitely changed up several elements of that. So, I mean, they have already made it so that the way that it plays out in the books can't happen. So, anything that we specifically discuss related to that, it might not apply to what's going to happen in the show anyway.
Yeah. I just want to say goodbye to Nicole. She said she was heading home, I think. The thing about that scene, Cersei had one of probably the best, or Lena Headey had one of the best line readings or moments, character moments, when they were talking about, we don't hurt little girls in Dorne, and she says everywhere in the world they hurt little girls. I just love the way she delivered that line.
Yeah. I was trying to get to that earlier. That was super awesome, powerful.
Yeah, that's about the only time I've felt any.
Yeah.
That she wasn't trying to play somebody. That it sort of was her psyche of being a woman and in this world and how she feels she's been treated and the idea that
I mean, I think that there's a seed of sincerity and an arguable amount beyond that of this is just a mom who's got 3 kids. One's dead in front of her in her arms. She then got raped at his feet. And she's got a daughter that she doesn't think she'll ever see again because she's a ward of Dorne. And she's got Tommen, who is a good, like she says, he's a good child, a decent child. He'll probably be the first king in 50 years to deserve the throne. But sadly, they didn't say crown. But it was still like, I think there was still there's loss there. I mean, and it's, I think she definitely pushed it where she could, but I think in Oberyn, one of the things that I liked about that scene so much is that they kind of found a common language, a common ground, where he basically gave her an oath that her daughter would be okay, that he would make sure her daughter was okay, and I think that is probably the only thing that she has to look forward to, other than nailing this thing with Tyrion. In her mind, closing the door on Joffrey's death, probably the only way she can find catharsis with it anyways.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with you for this scene. You know, I disagreed in terms of having any, I guess, warm or sympathy for her in the scene with Marjorie, because I felt like she never had actually let her guard down in that conversation with Marjorie. It was still all manipulation. But here I agree that I think that Oberyn was able to pierce that shell a little bit, and there was some real emotion there. Like, she was going to talk to him not about Myrcella, but about the trial, but Myrcella naturally comes up just because of who he is, and that had her open up a little bit in a more real way, and so I felt it there where I didn't in the other scene.
Well, if I may, because my opinion is very different from what the show is presenting, I think, from what we're used to from the books from Cersei, and, just seeing her despicable actions without really understanding why, and now we get a little narrative. But, Chooch, what did you think of Cersei in those scenes where she was kind of pleading? You don't really have any inner workings of Cersei from reading the book. So what's your POV on her going to the people that she went to and saying the things that she said? How authentic do you think it was?
The first discussion with Marjorie, I thought, like, in the facial expressions and the eye rolls, there was one where she kind of did an eye roll, and then it was like she was steeling herself because she's going to have to ask for help. And that seemed... I can see now, with Christiana having said, she was manipulating these people, I could see that being more calculated. But at the time, I thought that was sincere. Just the fact that she's eating crow, at least for the family, if not any other reason. And then, or at least for Tommen's future. And with the prince, I thought, yeah, I didn't even think about, like, jockeying for Tyrion, but just that she was wanting to know that her daughter was safe. Because I had been wondering for a while now, like, why is she still over there if the war supposedly ended and there's no more danger? Why isn't she already back?
Well, she's not coming back. She was sent there to marry the prince, not to be a temporary ward.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot that part.
So, as far as the idea of, I think the way you said it, Christiana, was that she sort of maybe wasn't going into the conversation, maybe playing on the idea of daughters and that thing, and sort of went that way because it naturally led her that way. I do think it was pre-planned to the effect of taking him to the end of the gardens and seeing the ship out on the water and saying, "Can you?"
That's true. So that must have been part of the plan.
But I do agree, though. I think that I felt like she was opening up and being a little more honest than maybe she expected. As the conversation went on, just again by some of the acting and the way the lines were delivered, I sort of felt that. But let's move on. So, unless anybody has anything else.
Well, I guess just one last thought on. I think the reason why I still think of the scene with Marjorie as being different from the other two, where she's having a more honest conversation, is that I don't believe for a second that Cersei actually wants Marjorie to marry Tommen. I think she is maybe trying to come to terms with the idea that she doesn't have any say in the matter and that it's going to have to happen, but she does not like the idea. So this idea of, he's going to need more than a mother, and this implication that maybe Marjorie is just the thing, I don't believe she believes that for a second. I think she thinks Marjorie is awful and wants her to leave, but knows that that's not a political reality.
Agreed.
Let's go ahead and get a couple of quick scenes out of the way, which were for humor and filler, but I think were probably, for me, the weakest scenes in the show, which were the 2 scenes with Podrick and Brienne.
No way!
What? Everybody else loved it, but
I want a 30-minute show of a sitcom or anything. I'll take anything of the 2 of them, like in an Odd Couple situation. I love those 2 together. They're adorable.
Yep. I
Yeah.
agree.
Chooch,
Oh yeah. I love all the time they have together. And
Grump.
PG.
I know, I'm grumpy.
Total grump. If I had a show
well.
of nothing but Pod and Brienne and the Hound and Arya, and just go back and forth between the 2 of them, I would be totally happy. But then that would just be fan fiction. So.
No, and just the couple brief scenes they had was just such a great little character arc, story arc, where she doesn't need him, she doesn't want him, she doesn't need a man, and all that, and then realizes he needs me. He's never had any proper training. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. And,
Right.
and hey, an extra pair of hands isn't too bad around the campfire.
Yeah.
So agreed.
Well, and that not just the
I-
extra. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just laughing because y'all are all correct. But I think the main thing with me was the problems that I had were more about that I couldn't get over was the idea that he couldn't ride a horse at all,
Yeah.
and the fact that he
It was
lived
fucking funny,
in
though.
this. Oh yeah, it was funny. That he lived in this world, and I don't care if you were working for Tyrion, all you did wine, that you don't know that you have to skin a rabbit.
Yeah, that was very sad making. I hated that.
So,
I
yeah,
didn't mind that.
and that made
Oh,
every.
Boy.
And, oh come on, that's like saying I don't know how to pee outside.
Just gonna
I live in this world. Come on.
But in the books,
We're
Pod
living in a
is seen
society.
as pretty inept, and
Mhm.
it's kind of like, oh yeah, we'll give Tyrion a squire. Yeah, we're gonna give him Podrick Payne, Sir Ilyn's younger brother. He can't do anything right. So it's kind of along those lines. And the other thing is, Brienne and Pod together. When I look at those scenes in the series, when I look at them in the books, it just makes me think of Dunk and Egg, which is short stories set in the world about 100 years in the past. It's a very tall knight, and she's very tall, and a squire that doesn't have much information. I'm not spoiling anything. And I don't know. I think George intended for there to be a mirror for Dunk and Egg there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I agree. I mean, I think what Brienne's realization in this episode is not that, oh gosh, I didn't realize it turns out that this kid that I thought was dumb is actually smart. No, he is actually a little dumb. But what she does recognize is that he has other virtues. For example, loyalty and courage and willing to work hard. So even if he doesn't have certain experience with things, just this idea that she tells him, I release you from your oath. You don't have to follow me. I'm telling you that it won't be fun. And he continues to follow her anyway. And he's trying, even though, so she asks him to do things, and he tries to do it, even though he obviously doesn't know how. He doesn't complain that, oh, I don't know how to do that, you have to show me. He just tries. And obviously it's not very effective, but he does try anyway. He is trying hard, and he took down a Kingsguard when it mattered. And that's not someone you just turn away just because they don't know how to do things. And so I think that I liked the relationship between them, and as far as riding a horse, I mean, if he's kind of a city kid but not especially highborn, I mean, it's not like he rides a horse all over the place, and it's like he points out with certainly in his service with Tyrion, he wasn't riding any horses, and he says he knew a little bit from when he was little, but just hasn't had to do it in a long time.
Oh.
So,
yeah.
Any other
And there's
questions?
a big difference.
It's
There's a
okay.
big difference between riding a horse around like a pasture or a few hours a day, or an hour a day or something, and going on a long journey, because he's riding all day long, and that is very different than being able to control a horse for just a short time.
Danny showed us that in season 1.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh,
there was
yeah,
another
PG.
reason she was walking funny, but it was horses too.
Well,
Much mounting going on.
Yeah.
I can tell you that riding a horse, holding the reins like this, you would learn that not to do that in first day of riding, and he should have remembered that, or at least Brienne could have said, hey, at least hold the reins the right way. But no, it was just something that bothered me. I definitely I like the humor between them, and I think that has potential. I just those little things bothered me, and it made me not enjoy the scenes as much as you guys. So that's
Oh.
just me, grumpy. So what can I say? We have a new person that stopped by the Q&A, and really don't have much to talk about with Stannis, but I did want to point out say hi and welcome, and it's Viola, and if I'm pronouncing that right, she said, I'm a big fan of Stannis freaking Baratheon. Am I the only one that is pissed at the show's portrayal of his awesome character? We need Stannis the Manus. So,
You are not the
yeah.
only one. Stannis has a huge following.
Yeah,
Really?
I'm all right. I'm good. I mean, I think so far what they've shown in the show, I think we've seen his power. We've seen what he's willing to do to use that power. I don't think anybody questions he's a badass at all, but he's never been a favorite character of mine. So, what do you think, Chooch? PG, ladies?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think he's different from the books, but I'm not a super Stannis fan necessarily from the books either. So I feel like it's not like I don't like the character. It's just that like I'm certainly not rooting for him or anything, and so the fact that his character's changed some doesn't like bother me at all.
Yeah. And I think the actor is doing a fantastic job of like executing the character the way that he is.
Right. Like my only complaint with Stannis related stuff is just that I think they, we talked about this. Was it last week or maybe the week before? Just that the timeline of what's going on with him is getting, it's having to bend over backwards a little bit to fit with the other storylines, because basically there's just a huge chunk of book 3 where we just really had no idea what he's doing.
Yeah.
And so they're having to kind of stretch that out and fill it in, and I think that's not entirely successful, but that's not a complaint about the portrayal of the character.
I think in the books, Stannis is portrayed a little more like Ned, and in the series, honor and will break before he bends. They always
very
say that.
wooden is how I would portray it.
And in the series, he seems like he's a pushover in a bit, like he's very controlled by the Red Woman, and it feels very different to me. But I do know that there is a huge following among the book readers. There are some big Stannis fanboys, and there are people who believe that Stannis should be sitting the Iron Throne, and that's how they want to see the series end. You're going to find, because the fans for this series are so plentiful, there is somebody who is hoping almost everybody ends up on the Iron Throne. I think the only one I've really never run into is anyone who wanted Joffrey there.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say there's a whole contingent of people who want Victarion, which is into the book stuff, but I'm just at the same time, like, I read those chapters and I'm like, really? Oh.
Yeah. Like,
okay. But yeah, that gets into book only stuff that we haven't seen on the show yet, so steer away from that. But yeah, it's certainly true that I guess there are people who are rooting for Stannis, which I'm sort of like, I will applaud anytime he does something that's helpful for characters I like, even just Davos, who works for him. But
Right.
I've still always kind of been like, I love Davos, and then I always kind of just want to pull Davos aside and say, Stannis, really? Okay, you've got your mind made up. I still like you, but, that's my...
Yeah, I've always gotten the same sort of what Nutty was saying is that Ari's got the sense that Stannis was Ned with his sense of honor taken to 11, and that made him a lot more obstinate and that sort of thing. But as the books have gone on, at least have gained a lot more appreciation for him.
See,
as a character, and the portrayal in the show, though, I think also correct is the idea that he's seems to be a little more tied, because we get more of the point of view of that relationship of how he is tied to Melisandre and that sort of thing.
see, I always saw Ned and Stannis's honor as different, like just going all the way down to alignment, whereas I think Ned was lawful good. I think Stannis is lawful neutral. I don't feel like it's really honor so much as the rules. He thinks people should play by the rules.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And so that's just that's my take. So it never really seemed like honor to me so much as just like, well, Robert was king and I'm his next eldest brother, so I should be king. It's as simple as that. And so that should be the only thing that matters to anyone, and therefore anyone who doesn't listen to me is just wrong. And that's how it always seems to me, and less about honor, because he's what's honorable about what he's doing with Melisandre? He seems very controlled by her in the books too. So, I don't know.
Well, let's get back to the episode. Thanks for the comment, Viola. Let's jump to the other pair that I would much rather see in a sitcom, and that would be Arya and the Hound. We have one really short scene where it's just the prayer list, which was awesome, with a short discussion of sort of tying it back to the prayer at the dinner when he just wanted to eat. Now he just wants to sleep, and he just wants her to finish the damn prayer. And then they do have the short discussion about the mountain and what would they do, or what would he do if the mountain was there. He would tell him to shut the fuck up so he can go to sleep. But then she adds his name to the end of the.
Well, she doesn't add it. It was always there.
Oh, yeah, but the idea that she put that as the punchline, the exclamation point, that, and whether he had actually, have they had a scene where she's done that before around him, and he noticed her name, because it was almost like it was sort of a surprise that.
I don't think so. Like she had to explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First time in my memory.
Yeah, it's the first time we see it. I think in the books, Arya has a lot of internal dialogue about and struggle about whether to keep his name on the end of the list, considering he saved her life a couple of times. Like, she struggles with that. So as I watched that scene, I was with my baby sister who's read all the books as well, and we're watching, and we're both just kind of sitting there like, is she going to say it? Is she going to say it? Is she going to say it? And then she says it, and we both cheered for him. We're like, here we go. That's some sass. You say it, you say it right in front of him. And
she said it with her back to him. She said it with no care, no fear, no concern. She was such a badass in that moment.
And then the look on his face.
Yeah, like, what the fuck?
Did she just... Oh, my goodness.
Well, I think that played into a lot of how he was treating her the next morning, too.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, moving to that scene.
He was.
Yeah, hurt his feelings, and then he wakes up, thinks she might have taken off on him, but she was just down by the
Oh.
by the river,
He
by the
was
stream,
water
river, whatever
dancing
that.
with Needle, which we all needed to see again.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to see it
Yeah.
again.
Well, you needed to see it again, and then we got the Reality Bites version of it, which is your friend's dead and Marin Trant's not, because
Yeah.
Trant had armor and a big fucking sword.
Yeah. She needed to hear that, though.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, that's what she needed to learn, is that, you know, the dancing and the little sword is not going to help you survive this this world you live in. You better.
Mhm.
And the thing is, Sirio,
Especially with that last name.
you know, well, you know, it's not. In some ways, it's not fair for the Hound to be blaming Sirio for not teaching her that, because of course they were interrupted, and the aspect that the Hound is ignoring when he's saying, "Oh, Marin Trant killed this guy." Well, the problem is Sirio probably could have gotten away, but the whole thing was that he was buying time so that Arya could get away. He sacrificed himself to save her, and so it's not like he just was taken down. Is that he was willing to fight in a way that he knew was probably going to lead to his death, because he decided it was a cause worth fighting for, and as opposed to running, which he probably could have gotten away if that had been his priority.
Well, and again, his feelings were still hurt from the night before.
Oh yeah, I agree. What I was also, I guess, just going to follow up with, and I kind of got lost from it, was just the idea that even though Sirio probably would have eventually got around to teaching her how to fight someone who's not fighting like a water dancer, that is absolutely a lesson that Arya needs to learn, because if she did not realize that Needle was not going to just poke right through his armor. I think she was sincerely surprised when it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was a little surprised that she actually tried.
Yeah, that she was disappointed
with that much force.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, so, you know, even though he obviously, you know, he taught it to her in a mean way, this is absolutely something that Arya needs to realize. You know, if she's thinking she's going to go kill all these people, he's just saying, you know, dancing around with your sword and not taking into account the fact that people are bigger than you, better armored than you, and better armed than you, you're just going to get yourself killed immediately. So what's that accomplish?
Yep. So, did anybody else have anything on Arya and the Hound?
Nope.
If not, we will move over to...
I want to echo what Nutty said earlier, which is that if they had a whole show that was just Pod and Brienne and Arya and the Hound, I would totally watch that show.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, just reiterating what I said before.
Mm-hmm. So let's go to what I thought was just fun and funny as anything else was the scenes at the Eyrie.
Oh my God!
Seeing Peter squirm and all that stuff, and probably one of the funniest moments in all of Game of Thrones was her opening that door and pulling in the Septon for a quick wedding.
Oh man.
The look on his face was just priceless. But,
so, Chooch, how about those
Alexa.
revelations?
Oh, yeah.
There were some revelations dropped, Chooch. What did you think of that?
Yeah. Well, the fact that Crazy Town is really in love with them. I guess that's not couldn't be too surprising because he does have a silver tongue and she's batshit crazy. But yeah, the whole we already had our wedding night and when you convinced me to kill my husband, basically.
Yeah.
And then she was telling about how she convinced Kat in a letter about Tyrion, and then he shuts her up.
Oh, right.
I mean, that was a lot of info.
She didn't say about Tyrion. She said about the Lannisters. I think, unfortunately, I've read several people who read more into what she said than she actually said, because I've read people who thought that she said that she was also she and Littlefinger were also responsible for sending the assassin after Bran fell, the assassin that tried to kill Bran when he was still unconscious.
Yeah, I don't think she said that.
She didn't, but I've read people who thought that she said that.
Huh.
And so I think
she said that she wrote the letter like he told her.
I know she didn't say that. I agree. I'm saying that I think people misunderstood and thought that's what she was talking about.
Perhaps they thought that because for so long many people thought, well, whoever killed Jon Arryn is also the person that killed or sent the assassin, and you know that it's all tied into one thing. So having this giant revelation of, wait a minute, Lysa, who's sending this email, sending this raven saying, yeah, I think the Lannisters killed my husband, and we have to worry about this, was actually the person that killed Jon. Like Jon Arryn, like it's so mind blowing that I'm sure that a lot of people it's going to take some time to process.
Yeah.
I know it did for me, because I'm like, when I read that chapter, which by the way we don't find this out until Feast for Crows, and it right.
Really?
I'm pretty sure.
Well, I think they moved it up just a little bit, but I think it was still in Storm of Swords.
Well, I'm pretty sure it was Feast for Crows. Not that it matters. Not that it matters. But because it's all at the Vale when we find out. And I just remember when I read that, and I was like, wait a minute. And I had to go back, and I had to think, and I had to say, okay, so wait, so she did this. Is this completely out of left field? And I had to re-examine everything that had happened before, and then realize, no, this is not completely out of left field. It's just in the books, we're following everything from points of view. So, of course, when we hear about Lysa, it's all from Catelyn's point of view. And Catelyn realizes, yeah, my sister's a little crazy, but, you know, she's genuinely scared of the Lannisters. She has no idea that her sister would ever be in collusion. She would never expect that. And then for the series, I mean, people are like, I forgot about this chick. How is she involved? What? So.
Yeah, I mean the idea that you know, the whole reason, or one of the main reasons that, you know, Ned is convinced to go to King's Landing, you know, he was about to turn down the whole request, but then finding out that Jon Arryn was killed, and that not only was he killed, but that now they're saying the Lannisters did it, was sort of the impetus for all that. And, you know, well, why would Peter do that or want to do that? And, you know, it's like, well, I guess to get them separated, maybe, so that, you know, she can be with Cat, or what, you know, get that out of the way. So lots of things that you have to think about through that. There's a question, or, you know, that or Robin, Nipple Lord Robin, as I like to call him, referred to Peter as Uncle Peter. Am I missing something here? I think that was just sort of the familiar, you know, someone that's always around. You call them, you know, uncle, you know, type thing, more than you know, the idea that, you know, oh, he's always around. That's my Uncle Peter. You know, not that it was literal uncle. Type thing. So
their relationship is close enough that he'd be more intimate than Lord. Well, he wouldn't have been a lord, right? Before, it would be more than, you know, whatever you would call Littlefinger before he became a lord. But you have to come up with some sort of a name. Should we talk about what she means by "we already had our wedding night"?
One brief note.
They'll probably tell us. I think we'll get more info from the show.
Yeah, I agree. I bet you they'll still talk more about it.
I do want to say something because Viola is asking some very spoiler-heavy questions in the Q&A. Just to let you know, Viola, this is a non-spoiler show as far as we talk about things in the books, but only in reference to how they are in things that they've already shown on the television show. So,
right.
Otherwise, very good questions, though.
Yes.
We err on the side of caution, though.
Yes. So things like that we won't go into for fear of spoiling for not only Chooch, who is our compatriot here, who has not read the books past the first book, and then anybody that listens to the show, they like the idea that we keep things directly on what's happened on the television show so far. But back to this. Go ahead, Christine.
So there was an article on IO9. First, it started just in their recap of the episode, but then that got spun out to one of their comment of the week articles that was basically a bunch of people who were just asking the question, is Littlefinger really outsmarting himself here? Does he really have all this planned out? Is this something where he's really this puppeteer who's orchestrating everything, and how does that make sense? Because some of the things he's doing don't seem to really support all of that. And so basically, I think ultimately the biggest concern that the people who are feeling like the plan didn't make sense just felt like if they thought that, if I guess their primary question was, why would Littlefinger have Jon Arryn killed, presumably because he was going to expose the Lannisters' incest, if he would then help Ned find out that same information once Ned arrives in town? Why would he kill the one guy and actually help the other guy do the same thing that he killed the first guy for? And that was the crux of their concern. But I don't know. So I feel like if we wanted to go into a deep discussion of what his plans and motives are, it would take a long time. But I don't know how much you guys want to talk about it. But I could talk about it for a long time because Littlefinger is one of my favorite characters, and I think he's awesome. So,
unless he thought it would lead to Ned's death, but I just took it for face value of his conversation with Sansa, or was it Sansa? Just sowing chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows who you are if strange things happen.
Yeah, I
was just going to say, I think there's two things. Just what Chooch said about sowing chaos, and then also that he's all about, okay, improving my station, and so the idea of getting, knowing that Lysa loves him, and that he has that in if Jon Arryn's out of the way and able to be Lord of the Vale, or at least I guess Robin is officially Lord of the Vale, but the idea that he could have that position and is better than than where he would have been before. So sort of ties into there. And the idea of getting Ned out of the way eventually and that sort of stuff didn't hurt, I'm sure.
I think. Oh, go ahead.
I just think that Littlefinger has multiple goals, and just because we heard part of the plot from Lysa doesn't mean that she has all of the plot.
Mm-hmm.
I believe for Lysa, she thinks that Littlefinger's goals were to kill Jon Arryn so that she no longer had to be married to him and she could marry again and she could marry Peter.
Mm-hmm.
And that to put the blame on the Lannisters was to basically help establish him and get him to a position so he could marry her, and that everything was about her. Whereas in Littlefinger's side, I personally believe, and this is total headcanon and has nothing to do with spoilers because we don't get Littlefinger chapters, my belief is he wanted to help Ned get in trouble so Ned could end up dead, so he didn't marry Lysa and he married the Tully that he actually wanted to marry, which was Cat. And when Cat is killed, he's like, oh, I guess I gotta marry Lysa now. But I still think that he has other motives and he has other plans, and he definitely wants to increase his position. He wants to be more than just the Lord of the Fingers, which is a pathetic little township, which we don't see in the series. And I think that he has higher aspirations. You know, as we said last week, if he could burn down the city and be the king of a pile of embers, he would do that.
Mm-hmm.
He just wants to be in charge. He's not going to be happy with just the veil.
Right. He wants everything. I think maybe part of where the confusion is a little bit like what I was saying earlier in terms of, because we got this big revelation, I think some people have conflated that to mean that he was responsible for all sorts of other things that are not actually directly related. Like some of the people, the commenters in that one particular discussion were saying things like, if he loved Kat, why would he arrange the red wedding? And it's like, he didn't. He wasn't even in town.
Yeah,
when
he
that
had
happened.
nothing to do with that.
And in fact, that was probably the biggest blow to his other plans otherwise, you know, is that because it takes one of his primary objectives off the table, that was his hope that he might eventually be able to make something happen with Kat. But at the same time, she, you know, we saw in their last meeting in season 2 that she was really not giving him even the time of day. So he had maybe kind of figured that was not going to happen, but he wasn't, you know, he certainly wouldn't have arranged to have her killed. And in fact, the whole red wedding thing was probably the idea that they killed Kat too was not like part of the plan as much as it was just kind of how it went down. You know, the plan was to take out Rob, and Kat happened to be there and put herself in a position where it was easier to kill her than to not. So I again, it's like it's not like they said spare her. It was just that she, you know, was not part of the objective so much as she just was, you know, there and got killed because it was a chaotic situation.
Yeah, because she was there. I agree. I don't think she was one of the targets. For instance,
I disagree. I think Tywin was still pissed that she locked up Tyrion and Jaime.
I could see that. I don't think he went that far because, you know, he's like, well, we got Jaime, we're good, you know, whatever. But I think that there were specific people that they wanted killed. They wanted Rob killed. They wanted the big lords of the North killed. They wanted Brendan Tully killed.
Missed him.
They missed him, absolutely. And they didn't want Edmure killed because they want to be able to control him.
Yeah.
And then she just happened to be there.
No, I think she was a target. I think that her name was definitely on Tywin's list because the one thing that we've heard almost every episode is that a Lannister pays his debts. Everybody knows that line more than they know the actual house words.
That's true. Absolutely.
Well, but they wouldn't have been able to control that, though. I mean, they wouldn't have even had any way of making sure that she was going to be there, other than maybe just guessing that it was likely.
Oh, and another target, of course, would be Rob's pregnant wife, which is totally different in the books. Different wife, different everything. She didn't go. She wasn't killed. So that would definitely also be important because so far as King's Landing knows, Bran and Rickon are dead. They killed Rob, and if there's a baby, that baby then is Lord of Winterfell. Well, kill the baby, and all we have is Sansa. Sansa is going to hold Winterfell, and then we'll just give her to Tyrion. So, like, there was plans and machinations going on.
Yeah, but I guess just to sum up what Littlefinger's plan is, like we've talked about, there's a whole lot of just sowing chaos, and I think he's just sort of thinking stability is bad because then the normal class structure limits what anybody can do, you know, whereas chaos is a ladder. You know, his whole thing there is that if he shakes stuff up, then he can just, if he's prepared, he can take opportunities where they present themselves to change things up. And so I think a lot of the stuff that it's not like it's some master plan where he's orchestrating everything and he's omniscient in some way. I don't think that's the case at all. It's more just a case that he makes big moves and he has some objectives in mind, but he is going to basically just keep playing whatever cards he gets dealt next and see what happens. Rely on the fact that he's better at thinking on his feet than other people.
So let's get back to the Eyrie, and first the I like the scene heading up the mountain ridge there. The idea of the Bloody Gate a little bit different in the books as far as like the approach to the Eyrie. I miss the donkey rides and the basket with the being pulled up by, and
they shortened
all
that up
stuff.
again this time. Well, it wasn't in there at all, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they get in. They've got the first meeting in the throne room with Nipplelord Robin throwing the bird present out the moon door. I just love that little bit with the gets his present. He's so excited, and then immediately just throws it right out the little door.
Yeah.
When he did that, my baby sister's sitting right next to me. She goes, "Oh my God!"
Yeah, another little rich prick.
She's like, "I would be so mad if my son did that."
He can do no wrong.
What I think's fun though about that, of course, Lysa's not going to be mad, but I like to think that even Littlefinger's not mad because he has no real affection for the kid anyway. It's all just kind of like, he sees the kid do that and he's probably in his head he's going, what a little shit.
Yeah, right.
So all he cares about is that Robin likes him and calls him Uncle Peter and says, "Oh boy, a present." So thinks of him as someone who gives him presents. Which is going to just make him easier to control.
Yeah.
Yep. And Lysa has her. She's just the ultra passive aggressive the whole time. With Sansa at first
Dear
there,
Lord.
and then later.
Did we all pray for her in those moments as Lysa got crazier and crazier?
Well, are we talking about the dinner scene later yet, or?
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. But even before she was doing stuff in the throne room, but sending her off, and then the again mentioned the approach to the wedding and the idea of first getting him to having her. Making her declarations and saying, "I did all this for you," and she kisses her to shut her up, and then finally, he's like, "Okay, let's do the wedding today," and then they jump right to the wedding, and then her declaration to the Septon that, when my man makes love to me tonight, there's going to be some screaming.
Yeah.
And
there was.
Yeah.
Poor Sansa.
And it's funny because it sounded like a loon at first. But I also really liked his bit though of, very gently, because he still needs her, pointing out to her that's like, well, we both know that you did that, but the only thing that can make that be a problem for us now is if you keep talking about it out loud. So how about we both just remember that in silence?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that.
Yes. He's like, I need her, but she's not as easy to control as her son. I want to point out for everyone that the screaming is completely from the books.
Yeah, in the books, isn't she yelling like, "Put a baby in me, put a baby in me"?
It gets very graphic. It's even worse in the books, and you're reading it from Sansa's perspective, so you're just mortified with her.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, and then, but at least the next day, she She bakes some and brings her some lemon cakes just for you, Nutty. Some lemon cakes for Sansa.
That scene was so great because it starts off where she's actually being really nice and kind of sweet and sharing this memory of Kat when she was young, and they're sharing a moment, and Sansa's really just starting to go, oh, maybe at last I found someone who's got my back here, family, right?
This won't be so bad.
And we just, it's a reminder that, you never get what you want on this show. Anytime you think you're about to get something that you wanted, it's going to turn out to be horrible in some way. Just like, oh, well, we just want some family to be reunited. Well, turns out she's crazy. See, the critical distinction here that I think Sansa learned in this episode is that crazy and stupid are not the same thing.
Yep.
Lysa is crazy, not stupid.
Yep.
And so she absolutely sees the absolutely real inappropriate affection that Peter has for Sansa. And she's absolutely right, even though Sansa is still not completely aware of that. But she's just, she's crazy about it. And so that makes, people who are crazy and smart are some of the most difficult possible people to deal with, because you cannot, you can't rely on them to be reasonable, and yet you also can't fool them with easy lies, because they'll realize what you're doing. So
absolutely. And the other thing that we see in the scene is Sansa's biggest skill, and that is survival. What does she do when Lysa starts going crazy? She's just, no, he loves you. She tells her everything she knows she wants to hear. She doesn't even sit there and think about it. She doesn't do anything but go straight into survival mode. And
well, yeah, Joffrey trained her well, didn't he? She didn't even miss a beat.
The book readers, some people can get down on Sansa because they say she's weak, she's passive, she's easily manipulated, yada, yada, yada. But the biggest thing that I say back to them is, yeah, but she's alive. She's survived. And so she definitely does have a skill, and she learns as she goes. It takes her a while to learn. But this is, when you go back through the books and you reread it, you start to see that survival instinct a little bit more, I think. And I just love this scene because I'm like, there's Sansa, surviving all up in that place.
I think a lot of people just can never let go that there was a point where Sansa liked Joffrey.
There's that too, yes.
So I think that, obviously she learned to her own despair later how awful he was. But there was a point where we knew how awful he was, or at least saw the potential for it, but she was still defending him. And so I think a lot of people just can never let that go. They're not willing to ever forgive her for that. That's my perception of it.
Yeah. They were going to be like Florian and Jonquil.
Oh, God. But then we had, again, another one of the reality bites moments is her realizing that, she may have sensed it before, but fully realizing that maybe Tyrion is about the only person that's had her back, and
actually
protected
cared
her,
what she thought.
Ever cared about her, from
Right.
since she got to King's Landing. So.
Oh, but that moment where she's just like, she's in tears, but then eventually when Lysa decides she believes her and they're hugging, she's kind of so relieved at a moment, but then it's kind of like, oh, and then as soon as Tyrion is dead, you can marry Robin and be Lady of the Vale, and then you just see her open her eyes and go, oh,
what
God.
the
Oh no!
fuck?
Oh no!
Yeah.
Poor Sansa.
Marrying cousins is what all the rich people do.
Oh.
Not good.
Especially
what you
since
hear.
they are straight up cousins. I mean, like literal, actual, real first cousins.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and from indications, he appears to have stopped breastfeeding, but I guess Sansa will know better than any of us
he
someday.
was sitting up there in her lap in the same posture, but we didn't see any actual breastfeeding this time.
God.
Maybe he just
Hopefully
wasn't
she's
hungry. We'll see.
saving all of that for Peter now.
Ew.
I meant boobs. I didn't mean milk, guys.
Moving on. Oh my. Yeah. Yeah, but just jumping back, one note I had was just the idea of the passive aggressive Lysa. Like you were saying, Christiana, you know, she starts out with this nice story about Cat and eating, but then it just gets to like this ultra passive aggressive. Even just talking about that, about how, you know, even before she gets to like this, you know, going after Brandon, the sweetest thing, but just the idea of the way she was talking about Catelyn, that you could tell she was just the jealous younger sister, and just, you know, it just got darker and darker as it went along. But and then she's talking about, you know, we know that Peter has absolutely nothing to do with his women at his, you know, whorehouses, and she just has it in her head that he is, you know, does all these vile things to these women, and then, you know, Sansa, what has he done to you? What did you know?
Well, see, the thing is, again, it's that whole crazy not stupid thing, is that I think, so she sincerely loves him, but I think that there's a part of her that can sense that he doesn't really love her. She tries to convince herself that he does, but I don't think she's entirely successful, and that's part of why she's so crazy jealous about it. We lost Nutty.
Yeah, she even,
what happened?
Oh,
Not
I
sure.
don't know. But she even said, you know, the idea that that Peter loved your mother, you know, not me. You know, even that she knew.
Yeah.
She knew, understood that she was smart enough to understand that it wasn't.
It was an
her
interesting
that he wanted. So
little detail that they just threw in there that, you know, is certainly exactly what happened, but it's just a reminder that we haven't thought about in a while, which was that technically Cat was originally supposed to marry not Ned, but Ned's brother.
Right.
That's who she was in love with before she actually married Ned. And, you know, she came to love Ned, but that wasn't who she was in love with prior.
right. So, any other thoughts about the Eyrie before we go beyond the wall? Okay, so we have the last, I guess it was almost 20 minutes of the show was the scenes at Craster's Keep.
Some messed up stuff going on.
Yeah, but the idea that you have first Locke, who's new to the group, and he's sort of the scout going in to survey the situation.
Although
discovers.
Sorry, it was an interesting detail, I think, that, I mean, we know, of course, that he has an ulterior motive and probably would have volunteered to be a scout, but it seems as though that wasn't even really the plan. It was like, you know, when he comes back from his little scouting mission, they're, like, surprised. It's like, oh, you're back. We didn't realize that you had gone off to scout.
Yeah, you don't get the, or at least an understanding of what led up to that, but yeah, he's scouts out the camp, finds Bran and the rest of them in the hut, comes up with a good story to keep Jon from discovering them or knowing about them, you know, saying there may be hounds in there, so we should
I was going to say dubiously call it a good plan, but, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, at least came up with a story, but the idea that was
plausible.
Yeah.
Getting to the point of, you know, we don't want to alert them, so we need to stay away from these dogs. Whereas there really was no surprise; they just charge in, roar, as they go in, and you know,
well, and
it's like there was no.
I think the maybe my concern was that it was just a plan that wouldn't hold up to scrutiny, that there would be suspicion later once they realized, hey, even if they take out all the other guys, so where are these dogs you were talking about? But then I guess what I realized is that he was not planning to be sticking around that long. He was thinking by the time anyone would find out that that was not true, I'm already going to be gone. So, so that's why I guess it was not a problem the way he was planning to actually go about things.
Mm-hmm. So he comes, but before that, Locke comes back. It says how many people are there. They have their plan of going in at night. Cut to discussion between Bran and Jojen and everybody just about. Jojen looks sick. He's coughing.
Oh man, he's looking
talking
rough.
about getting water, looking rough, and Jojen's pretty much like, Bran, don't. When it comes to all this, it doesn't matter. It's you that needs to get to this tree, and what happens to us doesn't matter. We're just trying. Our job is to get you there.
Mm-hmm.
He has a vision of the tree, the great weirwood tree on the hill. And then he has,
That was a cool vision. The effect of his visions of just, you can see that he's starting to slip a little bit, like in terms of, is he seeing what's really there, or is he seeing the vision and it's blending a little bit for him? Because he starts by like, you're not here, and even Mira is like, what do you mean? Like you're not making sense.
Yeah.
And so he's not looking good. That's just kind of alarming.
No, and the vision of the burning hand doesn't bode well for.
Yeah, I mean, because it's a little ominous when he's essentially saying like, "Oh, I know that I'm not going to die here."
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh, what does that mean?"
2 feet to the left.
Especially since our last vision of fire was Melisandre talking to Davos' son, talking about how fire is a good way to die.
Yeah.
But
it sounds like something Lord of Light would say.
Yeah.
Not someone who's on fire.
Exactly. Or a bunny, for that matter.
Yep. But they cut to, talk about...
I'm sorry, this is a total tangent, but I just had a vision of someone being burned at the stake and yelling through the flames, "Totally worth it!"
Best way to die!
Anyway, I'm sorry.
So, yes, while they're, I guess, approaching on their attack, Carl shows up in the tent with a couple of his men to do bad things to Mira. Jojen tries to stop him by telling him of the vision that he has visions. Carl sort of scoffs at that, but then says, "Oh yeah, I see you dying.
Yeah.
Real soon, motherfucker."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, he did a great job of distracting him, because I was afraid that we were about to have a really horrifying scene with Mira, and I was already grateful that there weren't any more boob counts, because I would not have been happy to have counted Mira's raped boobs.
No.
I agree.
Cheers again to you for that, PG. I love that new rule.
Mm-hmm. Well, and especially just given that this, because they never went here in the books, it wasn't a question of like, oh, well, we know she doesn't get raped in the books, so she's safe, because we don't know. The whole thing was different. But I agree 100% that I'm really glad that that they were able to stop it before it went too far. Just especially since this season's been a little a little closer to the line than we'd like on that score. So I'm glad that it was stopped sooner than that. And agreed that Jojen was really kind of just more buying time than anything else, because he knew that something was coming eventually, but it didn't necessarily mean that he was going to prevent bad things from happening in the meantime. So he's just trying to, like, I will admit that I laughed at the bit where he's saying, "I've got the sight, I see things," and
Yeah.
Carl's just like, "Oh, well, that sounds useful."
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, it's like, no, I mean things that haven't happened yet.
Yeah, no. It was really good,
That
and
sounds funny.
I think also more to the point, we have him delaying, like you said, but this was also another scene where I kept saying, "Bran, jump into Hodor! Bran, jump into Hodor!" And he didn't jump into Hodor at that point. I'm like, this is the perfect opportunity, and we'll get that later.
Yeah.
Yep. So, John and everybody arrives, unless there was something else we wanted to mention.
Yeah, I was just thinking we could. You were saying we could get that later, but I'm kind of really the next thing that happens, right?
Yeah. So yeah, John arrives, and while they're attacking the main force, Lox comes over there, sort of does the end around, and gets there, and discovers real fast which one is Bran by cutting his leg, and
and see, the thing is, if Locke wasn't in such a hurry,
If he wasn't such
it might
a
have still
dick.
worked. Yeah.
I mean, he's a
The thing
dick.
was, they were saying, "You're with John," and they're all happy, and it was only when he goes, "You're Brandon Stark," and they're all like, "Wait a minute, why does that matter so much all of a sudden?" That's that's when they were tipped that there was something wrong with him. Otherwise, they might have just said, well, I suppose Jojen and Mira would have been tipped to it when he unties Bran and carries him away without helping anybody else.
Yeah.
They would have said, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, there's that.
He's like, I want to make sure I'm untying the guy I want to untie, because I don't want anybody else running out to get help.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel like, I don't know why he didn't just kill everybody and then grab them, but I guess that would have taken too much time. But so he throws him over the shoulder. Jojen and Bran share a look, which obviously told Bran, hey, it's time to warg into Hodor. And then he does that, and Christian Nairn gets to have a little fun without,
I know, right?
completely, Hodor.
Passive and sweet, yeah. He got to kick some ass, like break some neck and shit.
Oh man, no. I just like, if there was ever a time when your hand is forced and you have to do something like this, it was this time. But at the same time, I thought they did a good job, especially his performance afterwards of driving home. That this is not really an okay thing to do.
No.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's one thing to say they had no other choice and this was life and death, and it was urgent. There was really no other option right now. But at the same time, just it's a little bit like Davos arguing to Stannis that he shouldn't use the magic to win the kingdom, right? It's kind of like, if you're really in a position where you have to use things like that to accomplish your goal, you should maybe be thinking about whether your goals are the right thing.
Right.
Which is, again, I'm not going to say Bran has turned to the dark side here exactly as much as he's realizing there is a dark side that there's absolutely room for abuse in, and even if we want to all say that maybe this time it was necessary, but where do you draw that line exactly? Where do you stop saying that it's okay for him to take Hodor's body without his consent and make him do horrible things that he would not be okay with?
Well, first you have to believe that what Bran believes, which is that Jojen is right, and that his constant going back to the three-eyed raven and the tree and all that stuff, that's not just something that's in his head. Jojen is reinforcing it and helping him, and just told him moments before, the rest of us don't matter. You have to get to that tree. No matter what happens to us, you have to go. So he had just had that pep talk, and you're right. I mean, Christian Nairn did an amazing performance afterwards where he's looking at literally the blood on his hands. And he just is horrified at what he's done, but then he also immediately does what Bran says. Yeah. So it was really, it was a tough scene to watch, but I thought that it was pretty fucking awesome, too.
in the books, they go a little more into the warging and how, Jojen is encouraging Bran to warg, but when he warged into Hodor that first time, everyone was surprised. And then there are a couple of scenes where he wargs into Hodor again, and Jojen's like, you can't do that. Number one, it's freaking Hodor out because he is conscious when you're in there. And number two, it's not right and it's not fair. And we're not getting so much of that in the show. But what we have in the show is...
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Dude.
But Hodor's completely
Wait,
conscious.
whoa, Nutty. Total cliffhanger.
We lost a little bit of what you were just saying.
Oh, where'd
Yeah.
you lose me?
That's a big cliffhanger.
What we're getting in this episode is... That's what
Okay,
You're saying
so
the
when he
books,
wargs
the books
in
have
this
these
episode-
things, but then we got...
Yeah, sorry. So the books have the other things, and when he wargs into Hodor in this episode, it's so different because not only is Hodor freaking out because he's being warged, but he's now murdering people. And Hodor is such a gentle creature that even though it's self-defense and it needed to happen, Hodor could never do that on his own. His own free will would prevent him from doing that. I mean, he's getting beaten up by these men, and he's a giant. He could kick their butts at any minute, but he doesn't because he's so gentle. And so to be forced to do that and have his free will taken away, it's so much more severe. So as I'm watching that scene, I'm like, yes, finally, Bran, you're in it. And then I realize, oh no, Hodor's going to have to kill these people. No, no, no. And then he's doing it, and in my head, and I'm screaming to myself, I'm like, no, this is just as bad as watching Hodor get beat up. And so it was very emotional. I empathize with Hodor. I feel very much for him. So watching this was very hard for me. But it does push that point that, excuse me, not only is warging into a human bad, but now you've irreparably changed Hodor, and you've given him a traumatic event that he's never going to be able to get over.
I had no idea he was conscious during the war game, so I was just thinking it's a dick move by Brandon not cutting himself free and turning Hodor around and telling him to go and making him see that.
Yeah.
Right.
So did you get from this episode that Hodor's conscious, or
No.
did I just spoil that?
Not at all.
Well, I don't know that they're going to really... I mean, they can't really go into it in quite the same way, I don't think. So I'm not sure if it's really a spoiler, but...
Well, I don't think it's a spoiler. I just think what I
But
mean
it-
is, like, I divulged it.
It got across the dick move, or you know.
Yeah. Well, so, but the other aspect of it, too, that, as Viv pointed out, that we also have to remember that how high the stakes are. It's not even just life and death for them right there in that situation, which you might even say that would be enough, but it's also this larger thing of the White Walkers and the Three-Eyed Raven and all of this stuff, and saying it's that important that Bran get there. But it just really does raise that question sometimes of, you might have a goal that is super important and larger than yourself, but at what point do you stop being able to say that the ends justify the means?
Right. So we had that going on while Jon and the rest are fighting the main battle, but then as actually more people are killed on screen than actually should be in the entire area, but we'll get to that in a minute. We had Carl end up in the same tent as Jon, and Jon sort of comes, again, this reality bites theme that was going on is the idea that Jon comes to understand that fighting with honor, or fighting the way that he was trained to fight, isn't really going to serve him real well when it comes to fighting against the Wildling Horde or people like Carl who don't fight with honor. So yeah, they fight. He is basically saved by one of Craster's wives, who plunges a knife into Carl's back, and then we have the creative death of Carl with
Yeah, that was badass.
with
Well, don't
Awesome
forget,
with
death.
Longclaw.
that was the same girl that was chained at his feet that he was beaten up in the last episode
Yeah.
while he was drinking that blood out of Mormont's skull. So I fucking loved that she got to do that. And then she got to see the sword come through his face. That was beautiful.
what I liked, I think that it goes. It's not more than that, but it's tied in with that. Is not only did she help in that sense and get at least some measure of vengeance against him,
And having saved herself too, yeah.
Well, right, but also the fact that the women at the end decline the Night's Watch, helping
Protection.
them, basically just saying, we are sick of people abusing us while telling us that what they're doing is protecting us.
Right.
And it doesn't matter that you say you're different because everyone says they're different.
Well, it came back a couple of times in this episode where Cersei said that thing about all over the world people hurt little girls. All of those wives, except for the Omega wife, whatever happened to her, probably in some form or another were related to him when he did all that stuff. So, yeah, I think you read that pretty clearly, pretty well. They're done with men at this point, I think.
Omega wife.
Omega wife.
If I could just say,
I don't know. Bottom bitch.
First wife.
Alpha.
first one. If I can just say, the scene with the sword, I'm watching it with my baby sister, and she sees it, and she starts hiding her face, and she's like, that is horrible, I'm going to have nightmares, oh no. And I'm just sitting there going, oh my god, that is so beautiful.
Yes.
I was
So
like, that
beautiful.
is, 'cause it could have looked so cheesy, but it looked so good.
Yeah.
And I was just, it was awesome.
And she
I do
didn't
want to
even-
add, kudos to John for giving the ladies a choice.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't happen in Western.
Yeah, he didn't say, come on, let's go.
There were only like a dozen of them anyways. I think there were more wives and daughters than there were Night's Watch.
Totally.
But so, like, the only other thing that I kind of still have left in this episode is just sort of recognizing that we got what is probably closest to one of the only possible reunions long awaited that we could have ever gotten, that we could hope for, that could actually work in some way and not turn horrible, which is John has Ghost back. Yay!
And what did Ghost fill up on right before running into John?
Rast. Get away.
He was apparently running around in circles because he...
Yeah. He lapped him. Well, and I think it would have been really cool if he'd come up with Rast's hand or something like that, so they'd all know.
See, I kind of assumed, I had almost wanted it to be Rast runs farther away and then gets taken out by a White Walker or something, but I guess it works okay for Ghost.
Hey, maybe Ghost left him alone with his intestines hanging out or something. Maybe there's a remedy. Maybe this could be fun yet.
Stop trying to cheer me up, Viv.
I'm trying.
What happened was Ghost just knocked him down and then pulled out his canteen and poured out water on the snow right in front of Rast.
Gotcha. I gotta say, I was really scared with where you were gonna go with that, Holyfield. I'm grateful that you went with canteen, so thank you for that.
I tell you. But yes, so was there anything else anybody want to talk about? Yeah, you did have the moment of possible reunion between Starks. Which did not happen.
You just gotta hope that Jojen's not full of shit, because Bran is like, he walked away from Sam. He walked away from Osha, right? Osha. And now he's walked away twice with Jon, like 10 feet fucking away. And it's like right there,
You know,
Well,
they'll
fucker better be telling the
hide in
truth.
big weirwood tree, and Bran will touch it, and nothing will happen, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, maybe it was at the South Pole.
Yeah. Or it'll be like Idiocracy, where they spend the whole movie trying to get to the time machine and it turns out being a carnival ride. Just that.
Sheriff Bullock speaks of Nutty having issues, saying that he said that was me trying to warg into Nutty. While we were having trouble.
It sounds like Nutty is still having troubles, though. She says in the chat that she just wanted to say, even if Jon doesn't get to see Bran, at least he gets Ghost. It was such a great scene in the book, too, even though it played out differently.
Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed.
And Mike Macaulay says, didn't Bran see Jon Snow? Yes, he saw him, but we were more talking about the actual reunion between the two.
Yeah,
which
they didn't get to interact.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I think I kind of have to point out, because I don't think PG will recognize it, to totally throw a tangent in here. Mike Macaulay's rocking a Depeche Mode avatar in the Q&A. See that DM, PG? That stands for Depeche Mode. I just thought,
I thought it sounded
for
direct message.
No.
I thought it was for Dick Move, Mike, actually.
Don't you say that about him.
Just on the note, though, of the decision that Bran makes, as hard as it was, I think that it really was probably right, because I do think that if Jon actually did get to see Bran, I don't think that he could be persuaded, at least right away, that Bran needed to keep going. Even if they were able to talk more about it later, Jon would insist that they come back to Castle Black first. And then after that, who knows what would happen.
The sole remaining family member, it would be hard for him to see all that Bran has been through. Because Bran actually has made choices that full-grown adults have had to make as a child. Just even in this episode, it's like really mature decisions that Stannis and Joffrey and everybody else had a bunch of people counseling him. Bran just has a giant and, 2 kids with him.
Mm-hmm.
So, pretty impressive shit.
Yeah.
So, did anybody have anything else they wanted to bring up from the episode? Okay.
Chooch, was there anything that you wanted to mention from last week?
I don't think so.
Right.
Or this week.
You were great about
Oh.
throwing in my notes.
Oh, did you like the line that I had a note on Carl's line when he was with Jon inside and they were doing their little sword fight? He said that we were free men, and that line struck me as so fucking offensive, because they killed the guy that owned the house, they stole his food, they were raping his wives, raping their daughters, killing, doing anything they wanted, not paying any regard to the food stores for the future, and there's no way those women had time with all the raping that was going on to go and do the fields or whatever else they did to survive.
Yeah. It's very short-sighted.
So glad he's dead.
It's like that old fable of the ant and the grasshopper, and the grasshopper saying, "It's so great to not have to work for anything during the summer."
Yeah. Just rape all the women all summer long.
That would have been a much darker version of that story.
That sounds like the definition of freedom there, Viv.
Yeah, we're going to have a talk next time I see you, Holyfield. Wear a cup.
I just, killing the guy taking his house. Hey, that's freedom.
Okay.
Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose.
There you go.
Let's see. Sheriff Bullock says, I had a Game of Thrones dream the night I had a Game of Thrones dream the night post-viewing this episode. I fought Locke. He was more skilled with a sword than I am, so I grabbed a torch and lit his hair aflame. He fell down screaming and his skull melted. Just thought I'd share. So,
See, it sounds like Sheriff Bullock doesn't fight with honor either.
Or at least not
okay.
his,
It's like at least they're evenly matched there. So I'm not criticizing Sheriff Bullock.
So, how about overall rating? How about ratings? What do you think, Chooch?
Ratings. I actually had a bunch of ideas, and I don't know that I decided which to go with. I'm gonna go with a 6 out of 10 royal eye rolls.
Ooh, okay.
Hey, that's good.
Was that 6 out of 10?
Yeah.
Okay. Is Chooch the first to rate?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I had to reconnect, so for those listening. What's going
Nutty,
on?
how about you?
All right.
What do you think, Nutty? Oh, did we lose Nutty?
Uh,
Oh, well.
Maybe so.
Christiana?
I'm going to say 9 out of 10 names on Arya's list.
Oh, very good. Nutty, are you back? Nutty, what's your rating? Are you muted? Or...
My rating. No. It keeps going in and out of Cylon. I'm going to give this episode.
The suspense is killing me.
I know, right? I want to
Suspense is
shout
killing
mine
me.
out.
Go ahead, Viv, since we can't hear Nutty. Sorry,
You
Nutty.
didn't hear it?
No, it's
No,
like
you
we're
just
still
completely
waiting for
faded
it.
out.
Oh, the suspense.
She's
Type it in the
typing
chat.
Yeah,
I
Typing
just
it in
did.
the chat.
7.5 out of 10 dropped calls.
There we go.
Aw.
Oh,
Wow.
no. Our foreign
Okay,
correspondent.
Viv. Viv.
1.5 out of 2 covered Lysa titties.
I'm glad you went with that. There you go. Well, you guys left me the softball pitch here. So 8 out of 10 swords through Carl's head.
Yes.
So,
The other one I was considering, but I think it's really more future stuff than now, which would have been 9 out of 10 sand snakes.
yeah. So yeah, my other one was going to be birds flying out of the moon door, but
Yes.
but,
Mine was always going to be about Lysa's titties being covered. I was so
yeah, they were
happy.
covered.
Lena is
So
woofing
happy
at
to
me.
recover.
She thinks it's bedtime.
I had flaming bunnies,
Okay, so
dead mutineers.
Dead.
real quick, we had our contest last week. We do one every week. There's a survey on specficmedia.com. If you go to the previous audio episode, you'll see a link. You'll also go if you go to the main podcast link, which is at the top menu. You'll see a link to the survey there. We asked 2 questions. The questions last week were how many mentions or sightings of Crown in the episode, and then the other one was deaths, on-screen deaths in the episode. Crown, there were 2. There was the sighting of the Crown, and then Tywin says the word Crown in his little speech with Cersei, discussion with Cersei. If there were other mentions of Crown that anybody remembers, let me know, but otherwise there were 2. As for on-screen deaths, it was pretty much named. There were 11 mutineers, and then after the fight they said there were 5 dead,
Mm-hmm. 5,
Jon's
including
men,
Locke. Yeah.
including Locke. But they actually, at least death blows on screen, there were 18. So
Really?
instead of 16 you would think of. Yeah, they actually had
Wow.
that I could count. So they had a couple
Good
extra
counting, Vicky.
deaths.
We got some
not
good
ca- yeah.
ratings in the
Oh,
Q&A.
yeah, let's go ahead and say them. I'm looking at something else here.
Okay, so Mike Macaulay says 8 out of 10 moon doors.
Mm-hmm.
Bullock says 7.5 out of 10 Irie shattering orgasms.
That's good.
Eerie or eerie.
Great.
Nice.
That's how they
Both
say it.
good ones.
Great play on words, yes. So, if those numbers are correct, which we're saying they are correct, 18 deaths and two crowns. Let's see.
Is the contest
Chooch.
still fun now, PG, now that you're doing all the counting?
I don't mind.
Yeah, good.
Chooch is doing audio, so I'm fine with this. Chooch almost had it perfect. He had 15 deaths, whereas everybody else had 7, 5, or 3. So 15 deaths, and then he got the crowns directly correct with 2.
Wow.
Everybody else went above 2. With 5, 7, 7, and then Viv, thinking there was just going to be a big old discussion of crowns. Everybody was going to be wearing a crown for some reason. They were just passing the crown around and putting it on people's heads.
There was a lot of places they went. There could have been talk about crowns, motherfucker. I read the description for the episode.
Well, just think how many more times it would have been.
Word.
Yeah, well, because there were lots of times where they talked about sitting the throne, or and if they had just said wearing the crown instead of sitting the throne or whatever, there would have been. I'd have won.
Yeah. What then? What?
You said 15, girl.
I know.
Anyway. So next episode, the name of the episode is The Laws of Gods and Men.
Yes.
So what do you think we should do? I think it'll be a death light episode.
Or do you want to go without a description? IMDb?
Well,
yes, no?
Yeah, go ahead and read it. I was just going to say it from memory, but go ahead.
Okay, it says, Stannis and Davos set sail with a new strategy. Dany meets with supplicants. Tyrion faces down his father in the throne room.
I was thinking how many times to say court or trial, but that may be difficult since it looks like this will be the trial episode.
Yeah, well, we could certainly go with number of times the word trial is, but that's probably a lot. It looks like we get to see Braavos, though. There were the preview showed some stuff of it.
What if we could do scenes that we get to see him on a boat?
On a boat.
I'm on a boat.
Since it looks like Stannis is going to be going to the bank, I thought how many times they say gold.
Oh, that's good. I like that one. Gold.
Okay, use of the word gold.
Gold! There's gold!
And maybe named character deaths.
There ain't no gold in them thar Lannister hills.
Let's get away from deaths this episode because I don't think there's going to be a whole lot. Let's go with something trial related. Law or guilt or
chains.
Chains. Okay. Let's do.
I got nothing. All I could do is read the description.
Let's do. How about murder? Or poison?
You're really selling it with the facial expressions, I gotta say. I think we're all tired. Nutty hasn't made it back.
Yeah, we're all tired.
Luna's getting impatient with me.
I'll second poison.
It'll be a surprise. PG will think of it.
I like that. Let's say poison.
PG will post a survey. PG will come up with a survey and put. What'd you say?
Golden poison.
Golden poison.
Oh my God! I thought he said golden pussy.
Well, we all know.
We got rid of boobs, but now we're counting vaginas.
Nature's pocket.
Nature's pocket.
Viv, you know that is book 5 material, and we are not a spoilery podcast, so will you please
golden
stop
pussies.
doing that?
Sorry, very sorry. Apologies.
Okay, well, we are going to call it a night. Again,
and
if
PG,
you would
when are you
like
going to have this survey up?
Could you, let me do my outro here? What's going on? No, I'm kidding. The survey will go up tomorrow, so, you completely made me lose my train of thought. Okay. For anybody that wants to take part in the show, we do this every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can leave comments on our Google site, YouTube page, specficmedia.com, and we'll try to pull those things into the show. We actually did have a long email from our friend Patman, his first big email of the season, but did not get into it tonight, but we'll try to include some some things next week from him. I'd like to thank everybody for joining me tonight and joining us, and we'll see you next time on Beyond the Wall. See you, everybody.
Hey.